To hear an administration and a Secretary of State refusing to act on a morally abhorrent point. I hate to hear this country, I'm ashamed that this country puts out a policy like this that says nothing, nothing. It says continue the same. We put no timetable on. We make no specific demand. We don't set it down. I'm ashamed that's our policy. That's what I'm ashamed of. I'm ashamed of the lack of moral backbone to this policy.
Well, I resent that deeply because there.
Yeah, that was Joe Biden going berserk at a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing in 1986 as he was interrogating then Secretary of State George Shultz. Now, the ostensible purpose of this hearing was about South Africa, but for Joe Biden, as we're going to see, the real purpose, or his real purpose, was to showboat for his, what he knew would be his upcoming campaign starting the following year. Of course, he had to drop out due to plagiarism. So let's go ahead and watch more of Joe Biden going berserk at that 1986 hearing.
If you just look at it from an economic standpoint and said if there were political stability of some kind in the area, what ought to happen? Just let the market work. Malawi would not take its stuff out that way.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Senator Helm. Senator Biden.
Mr. Secretary, first of all, I'm amazed Bishop Tutu was as restrained as he was. His people are being mugged, shot, imprisoned, killed, smothered. I admire his restraint, not his assertion. I suspect if you or I were in his position, if we were a black South African leader or otherwise, I found you to be a very principled man and a combative man. I doubt whether you'd be on the ramparts, I suggest. I know I would be, and I think you would be. So I think he's been pretty restrained.
Yeah, Joe Biden at the ramparts. Right.
You'd be on the ramparts, I suggest. I know I would be, and I think you would be. So I think he's been pretty restrained, number one. Number two, with regard to terrorism and necklaces.
I'd have to disagree with you, Senator. Well, I think to say that President Reagan's statement yesterday was nauseating is not anything that I could agree with under any circumstances.
I'm referring, not whether you agree with it or not, the frustration that he must feel. I'm surprised he hadn't said more.
Of course he feels frustration. We all feel frustration.
Yeah, but his people are dying.
His
people are dying. You feel frustration, they're dying. They're being shot. Children, we're talking about necklaces.
Of
they're
course.
lining up and they're shooting children.
Talking about necklaces, I wonder who was doing necklacing at the time. Can anybody out there help me on that?
They're shooting children.
It's a terrible situation, and what we need to be thinking about
is what to do
about it.
And what disturbs me, what disturbs me, and I will try not to be disturbed, is not merely your policy.
Remember, I'm a taxpayer.
I remember you're a taxpayer.
Just because I'm Secretary of State, you can't kick me around. I'm a taxpayer.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman. I understand that. But I want to tell you something.
That was George Shultz trying to lighten the mood a little bit. But, as we'll see, Joe Biden was absolutely determined to remain in serious, melodramatic campaign mode.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman. I understand that. But I want to tell you something. What disturbs me more than the policy that you call a policy is the rationale for the policy. The rationale for the policy. You set out 4 principles that you adhere to, and then and I will go over them in a moment. Then you say on page 14, we must not become part of South Africa's problem. We must remain part of their solution. We must not aim to impose ourselves, our solutions, our favorites in South Africa. Damn it, we have favorites in South Africa. The favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans. And the South Africans are majority black, and they are being excoriated. It is not to some stupid puppet government over there. It is not to the Afrikaner regime. We have no loyalty to them. We have no loyalty to South Africa, to South Africans. And the fact of the matter is I listened to this rationale, first of all. It is the leaders of South Africa and their people, black and white, who have the majority responsibility. They must rise to it. Well, they are rising to it. They're rising to it. The only thing left available to them with that repulsive, repugnant regime of Afrikaners there. And it's the only way they have. They've tried everything for the last 20 years. They begged, they borrowed, they crawled, and now they're taking up arms.
They campaigned, and that's what Joe Biden is obviously doing.
They crawled, and now they're taking up arms. The second thing, progress toward peace requires a timetable. Timetable, elimination of apartheid. What's our timetable? What are we saying to that repugnant regime? Are we saying you've got 20 days, 20 months, 20 years? We ask them to put up a timetable. What's our timetable? Where do we stand morally? Thirdly, black South Africans, the choices before black South Africans are equally clear. We call on them to avoid easy descent into violence, terrorism, and extremism. To demonstrate by their action they understand the need for compromise. Hell, they've tried to compromise for 20 years. They've tried everything in their power. And look what's happened to them. They're being crushed. And then you say, the fourth principle is that our policies and those of our allies ensure that we expand political liberties in the post-apartheid South Africa. Mr. Secretary, maybe it's because I come from the civil rights movement in this country. We sat there and we heard the same.
Joe Biden came from the civil rights movement? Oh yeah, I remember he marched in Selma, and that was him standing up, but right beside Martin Luther King as he gave his I Have a Dream speech. Yes, we all remember that so well.
Rights movement in this country. We sat there and we heard the same kind of arguments, the same exact arguments. We cannot impose from the North a solution on the South. They must work out their problems black and white together. We cannot, as a nation, expose them to the economic ravages that will come. We must consider what will happen after segregation before we eliminate segregation. My Lord. And finally,
That is not an accurate
let me read it.
parallel.
Let me read
Because
it.
we don't say we have to consider what happens after the end
Let
of
me read your-
apartheid before we end it. We have said again and again and again that it's an abhorrent system, and I can be
You
just as
say four
emotional as you
principles.
can
I
about
assume
that, and
they're
it
equal-
needs to end.
You say four principles. I assume they're equally important. You say fourth, our policy and those of our allies should ensure and expand the political liberties in the post-apartheid South Africa are accomplished by an expansion of economic opportunities. My God, worry about that when it comes. These people are being crushed. And we're sitting here with the same kind of rhetoric. The same thing we heard. We heard go slow. We heard we have to take care of the problem afterwards. We heard we can't impose.
You are totally misconstruing
Let me
the
read in my-
testimony that I gave.
Read first.
Furthermore, Senator, let me say that I hate to hear a senator of the United States calling for violence.
I'm not calling
That's
for violence.
what you're doing.
I
That
hate
is
to hear.
exactly what you're
I
doing.
hate to hear an administration and a Secretary of State refusing to act on a morally abhorrent point. I hate to hear this country. I'm ashamed that this country puts out a policy like this that says nothing. Nothing. It says continue the same. We put
Nothing! Nothing!
out a policy like this that says nothing. Nothing. It says continue the same. We put no timetable on. We make no specific demand. We don't set it down. I'm ashamed that's our policy. That's what I'm ashamed of. I'm ashamed of the lack of moral backbone to this policy.
Well, I
You may be
I
ashamed,
resent
I'm
that.
ashamed
I
too.
resent that deeply because there.
I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that you failed at the School of Melodramatics.
Deeply because there is tremendous moral backbone in that policy on a bipartisan basis and has been for
There is
many,
no
many
bipartisan
years.
basis for this.
There is, I doubt very much if there is any real disagreement with the objectives set out there, with the steps that have to be taken if there is going to be the kind of change you want. There is no other way but to get those things to happen.
The only way
now,
you're
the
gonna-
question is, what can we do that will get those things to happen? And I think that I outlined the course that is there, and also have tried to point up to
The only
you
way you
and to
avert
the South
violence is
African
act.
government, the terrible situation they're creating for themselves.
Obviously, the action has caused violence, or at least has not stopped the violence. There is violence, overwhelming violence in South Africa today. If you want to avoid more, the former Prime Minister of Australia is correct. Let the South African blacks know that we stand with them four square.
We do. We have let them know.
They don't believe it, neither do I.
Well,
Please let me
you can
just,
believe it or not. I might say I read my testimony a different way than you did. I'm surprised that it
Exactly
could
what
be
you said.
read with those inflections.
Thank you, Senator Biden. Senator Mathias.
And now, finally, let's watch Biden's fellow senators laugh at a silly melodramatics.
Inflections.
Thank you, Senator Biden. Senator Mathias.
Could I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?